Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you. Featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your very best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and now today we have an amazing guest on our show who's been here before speaking about all kinds of topics, particularly his book, which I'm going to have him tell you what that's about in a minute. But first, let's talk about what today he's very interested in disseminating all this information to you about. So he's a Connecticut native and a graduate of Vassar College. His name is Garrett Foster, and he's been an editor and a writer for television, magazines, newspapers for more than 30 years. Although he practiced yoga and meditation for 25 years, it wasn't until he experienced a dark night of the soul and a second cancer diagnosis that he understood what being spiritual really means. Now, Garrett's journey led him to becoming a prayer chaplain at the Unity of Delray Beach, a Life-Cycle Celebrant who performs all kinds of ceremonies, and an interfaith seminary student. Now, I want to welcome Garrett Foster.
Hey, Susan, how are you today?
Well, you know, Garrett, speaking to you makes me very happy because I realize, you know, you've done so much with your life, and you've gone through a lot of really difficult times, and you realize that, you know, the doors are open for you to do whatever you want, and you've chosen a very interesting thing, which is being an interfaith what should I call you, an interfaith student or an interfaith?
Well, I'm an interfaith student now, but I'm working toward being ordained as an interfaith minister.
Okay, now that's a pretty interesting thing. So let's get started. And this is a pretty general question, but you know, religion has been for how many centuries, you know, the source of a lot of fighting. Now, why? I mean, I don't understand, because if you've got a religious side, and if you have God and you are, you know, dealing with all kinds of studies of religion, I wouldn't think that you would want to go to war. I mean, what's that about?
You know, I think that what it's about is honestly religion. Religion has its place, but I think that when people focus on religion, what they become is they become trapped in the dogma, and they become trapped in the man-made rules of religion. They become trapped in my God is better than your God, and start arguing about the details in Scripture, the details in whose book is better than another book, and I think when that starts happening, we start to become separate from each other, and really we should be becoming one with each other.
Okay, now let's talk about that, becoming one with each other. I mean, realistically is the important word here. Do you think that that's possible, given the fact that some people, they study the Quran, some people study the Bible, the New Bible, the Old Bible? Is it possible that we could come together?
Well, I do believe it's possible, and I think it's just a matter of when it happens. For some people, it happens on this physical plane because they reach a level of enlightenment or consciousness where they're able to deal with that, and they see it. But I think it happens for all of us when we pass from whatever this existence is into the next one. We are all one. It's just a matter of realizing it. We all came from one source, and we're going to return to one source.
Okay, so let's get into some of the questions that I have asked you to prepare for me, because I felt that you understood yourself better than anyone. So the first question that I want to ask you is, how do you differentiate spirituality from religion?
For me, I think religion to me is, and I love religion, and I honor all religions, but I think that religion is more studying about Jesus and God and other spiritual leaders, and more about following the rules and directions, man-made rules, from somebody else. Whereas spirituality, I believe, is more organic. I believe that spirituality is not just learning about these things, but putting them into practice, finding ways to get in touch with your true nature, whatever that happens to be, and living a good life. I see lots of people that go to church every Sunday, but they're not necessarily living a life that you would want to emulate, you know.
Right.
Whereas other people I know have never stepped inside a church, don't prescribe to any specific religion, and yet they're the most spiritual, kind, loving, compassionate people I know.
Yeah. Let's talk about the religion called Buddhism. You know, Buddhism, people, at least people like me, when we think about Buddhism, we think about spirituality. Do you think about spirituality in that way too?
When I think about Buddhism?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I think Buddhism is very spiritual, and it's the interesting is there's no God in Buddhism. It's more a way of life and a philosophy, I would say. It's they have certain precepts that they follow, and it's really about preparing your mind to get to a place where you can experience that oneness that I was talking about earlier, and also it boils down to, it's like the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You know, and I believe that that with Buddhism, it's not so much like you have to do it this way or that way. You're finding your own path. So in that respect, I feel like it's more spiritual than some other religions.
Yeah. Garrett, have you ever studied the Quran?
Very, I have. In our seminary program, we take a major world religion every month and study it. So for 1 month, we studied Islam, and I visited a mosque. We read excerpts from the Quran, and we got to know a bit about that religion, because there's such a really, especially in today's world, such a misperception about what it really is. Well,
that's what I wanted to ask you. I want to know, what's the misconception? Why do people think that Islam is pretty evil?
I think that it's a misperception because there are a few radical people in the Islam religion that have created a bad name for it, in the same way that there are also a few evangelicals that have taken that religion to the extreme, and it can happen in all religions, but because of terrorism and what's going on in the world, a lot of time Muslims are looked at as being people who are violent, who do not treat women right, and really it's the religion itself. It's based on peace. That's what it was founded on, and it is a very peaceful religion.
Some people would argue with you about that. They'd say that in the Quran, there are many things that it says that makes people extremely, not only violent, but kind of wanting to destroy the world if the world people don't agree with them. Do you believe in that? Do you think that's true?
I do not think that's true. I think that, again, it's as with any organized religion or any group of people, there are going to be some that will take a teaching to the nth degree and sort of twist it for their own agenda. But really, it's the Islam religion is based on not only peace, but loving other people, sharing, being, not to, enjoying your life and taking what's yours, but not being greedy, and making sure that you give to others. It's just, again, I think that it's going back to that thing about people getting caught up in the specifics of the religion, the dogma of the religion, and not tapping into the spirituality of it.
I hear you. Now, today my guest is Garrett Foster. He's a writer. He's a minister. and he's doing some great things right now. Now, let's talk a little bit about an interfaith minister. What is an interfaith minister?
So to me, an interfaith minister is someone who honors all paths or no path. It's somebody who is not going to tell you have to practice a certain kind of religion in one way or another, but that you can really piece together your own sort of religious life, whatever that means to you. And I think for everybody it's different. Like everybody's on a different path in this world, and I think that especially in today's world where we're more global, we come from diverse families, interfaith families. There are people that may they may have been raised Catholic, but as they grow up, they find that they like some of that the Catholic roots that they came from, but they're drawn to some aspect of Buddhism, or there's something about Judaism that appeals to them. And I think an interfaith minister really helps people to bridge the gap so that we do start to understand that we are more alike than we are not, and that we can, it's really get in touch with our true nature, and however we need to do that.
Yeah. Now, it seems to me that a lot of young people today don't have any religion. They don't care. Mm-hmm. They don't think about it. The parents don't push them to participate in their religion. And I want to know, maybe you have an answer to this, that how do you grab those people? How do you get young people to be interested in religion?
I think it has to be done on their platform, in their way. We're a digital world right now, and I think that like the rest of the world that is, brick and mortar stores are no longer what they once were, and shopping malls, and it's the same thing with religion. Brick and mortar churches don't necessarily work for people anymore. Our lives are such that it's not the case anymore where we're all home on Sunday and you can go to church with the family. People work, they're in school, they're running around doing different things. And I think that we need to find ways to sort of create churches without walls, that we can engage people to create a community that isn't restricted by you need to be at a certain place at a certain time. And I also think that churches need to become, I call it sacred activism, but I believe that the younger generation, the millennials, are very interested in activism and for certain causes, and I think that the more the churches can tap into that and become a vehicle for them to express themselves in whatever way they need to feel like they're helping in the world, they will become more involved in the community.
Yeah. Now, let's talk a little bit about the issue of your cancer. Did that result in a spiritual awakening for you?
It totally, it changed my life. And I had melanoma 9 years ago. And that, of course, scared me and changed my life and made me very much learn to respect the sun. But the second time I had cancer, I had bladder cancer, and that one was different. I think it was because I was a little bit older. It came at a time in my life when there was just it was like the perfect storm. There were a lot of things happening that I was confused about, I was angry about, I was scared about, and then this came. And I really believe that it was a wake-up call for me to live my life in a different way. I think that it became my greatest teacher and my greatest gift. And I never, ever would have thought in my life that I would be enrolled in a seminary program, that I would be a prayer chaplain. Not that I thought there was anything wrong with those things, but I guess I always thought, what do I have to offer somebody, or what, and the message came through loud and clear to me. It's like, just tell people what you know, tell people what's in your heart, tell them what you've learned, and you'll be good.
Let's talk about philosophical things for a moment. Part of your interfaith religion
Mm-hmm.
Is there a specific philosophy behind it?
For me, interfaith is, again, getting back to we are all one, and I think that once we realize that as a society, that we will be much better off. So that's really what I want to do is to work with people to bridge the gap between one religion and another, between one belief and another, for us to start to look at each other and realize we all came from that same initial spark of whatever that was, that creative brilliance,
Yeah. Interestingly enough, there are a lot of shows on TV that religious leaders do, and it's so huge. I mean, some of them, and when you look at these programs, you see thousands upon thousands of people listening to a very charismatic leader. What do you think about that? Because these people, they raise tons of money, and where does the money go? And is it really trying to get people to think religiously, or is it about getting people sort of fixed on this charismatic leader?
Well, I think if it works for people, that's great, and I do see it work for some people. I see a lot of times in situations like that where it's it becomes more about following the leader, and you're right, the sort of charismatic, almost cult-like thing. But what I don't see is the transfer to real life, where they're putting into practice what they're learning. And I think a lot of times it's because it's based on, for instance, like, I don't believe that we're born with sin. I think if we're created in God's likeness, then we are born perfect and whole and exactly the way we should be. Everybody has that divine potential in them. We can choose to do what we want with it. That's where, like, free will comes in. So, and I think that again, religions, when they became more political, more hierarchical, more, then rules started to come in where it's like, well, we'll accept these people, but not those people. We stand for this, but not that. Right. If you go back to the roots, Jesus loved everybody,
Right.
It's like,
he did.
There was no separation, no judgment.
Yeah. All right. So now let's talk a little bit about how you pray, because that is a very interesting question on the whole notion of how we pray or how you pray. When I was a kid, we used to do a little praying, but not much. But in your case, how do you pray?
So, when I was younger, I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school for 8 years, and I prayed in a way that was very, very structured, very, like, I almost had kind of a superstition around it. Like, I had to pray the exact same way. I had to pray, if you didn't, you wouldn't get what you wanted. God would strike you down, a very vengeful kind of angry God, which a lot of people believe in that kind of a God. And my understanding has changed so much. And to me now, my prayer is much more organic. It's much more of a conversation with God. And I'm saying God, I don't believe that there's a God, like a being out there. I believe that God is the universal love and energy and mystery that we come from and keeps us all going and we will return to. And I think that people are sometimes nervous to pray. Like, am I praying the right way? They, to pray out loud, they get, a little nervous. And really, my answer is there is no wrong way to pray. And everybody can pray in a different way. For it's really getting in touch with your true nature and honoring yourself and getting yourself open to a place where you can be loving and kind and compassionate. And to me, that can happen for some people walking in nature. It can happen to somebody else holding rosary beads and saying an actual prayer. It can be listening to music or dance. There's lots of ways that we can pray and communicate with our higher being.
Yes. I think what you're saying is just wonderful, because we need a world that is not so angry, that is not going to want to go to war, a world where everybody sort of joins one another and says, we are so lucky to live on this earth. It's a fabulous place. And I want to thank you now for giving me your opinion about so much about religion, Garrett Foster. But before we finish the show, you've written a book, and I want you to tell people of the book again and how they get in touch with you and how they can have a discussion with you.
Oh, sure. So the book is called The Accident of Being Human. It's a novel that I just published about a month ago, and it's really about three women that are connected by a lifetime of lives and two accidents that take place 25 years apart. And honestly, what I would sum it up by saying that the accident of being human is that there really is no accident at all. It's like we're all meant to come together for a reason. Everything we do has a consequence, and the things that you may today think are horrible, like my cancer diagnosis, down the road it's like you look back and say, oh my God, that was the greatest gift. There was no accident. That's what I needed to learn at that moment. Right.
Well, thank you so much again, Garrett.
Oh, and people can get in touch with me at Garrett at GarrettFosterWriter.com, and the book is available on Amazon.
Wonderful. Well, today my guest has been Garrett Foster, and I don't even have to say any more about him, because if you listen to this program, he has given you a lot of information, and I thank you again.
You're welcome. Thanks so much, Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Susan Brender Show. To be a guest, email sebrender@yahoo.com.